Parshas Vayishlach. This is one of the most interesting and important. Parshas Vayishlach is one of the most important and interesting readings of the entire Torah, because so many significant things happen here. The most important of which is Jacob getting a new name after whom all Jews will be called forever. I want to take you through some of the salient points of the Torah reading that I find very interesting. Jacob is in flight from his brother Esau, who wants to murder him, because as far as Esau is concerned, Jacob has stolen his firstborn blessing. He spends more than 2 decades away from his parents, building up a family with his father-in-law Laban, and now it's time to go home. And he has 4 wives. He's got a lot of kids. He's a very wealthy man, and one obstacle stands in his path, and that is his brother's still angry. All these years have passed, but his brother's wrath has not subsided. So Jacob prepares to confront his brother. And the Torah says a number of interesting things regarding this confrontation. The first thing it says is that he makes a prayer to God, and it's a beautiful prayer. And he says to God, Lord of my fathers, who tells me now to go home to my birthplace, katonti, mikol hachasadim and mikol ha'emes. I have been rendered small due to all of your kindnesses to me. It's the only time this word appears in the entire Torah. Katonti. I have been rendered inconsequential. I've been rendered insignificant. You see, most people, as they prosper and make money and become wealthy, they're not rendered small, they're rendered large. Vayishman Yeshurun Vayiva, as it says in the book of Deuteronomy. Most people, the Jewish people, would later become arrogant. Their heads would swell with their success and they would forget God. And that's what happens to most businessmen. They make money and they become arrogant. And yet Jacob says, the opposite happened to me. As I prospered, due to your blessing, O Lord, I have become humble. And I don't deserve everything you've given to me. I feel undeserving of it. And here I am asking for another thing, that you protect me from my brother. So why is it that some people are successful and they become arrogant, but Jacob was successful and he became humble? And the simple answer, of course, is he attributed his success to God's blessing. The mother of all sins, the source of human hubris, what leads to arrogance, is when you say, Kochi va'otzem yodi asi li yisachai lazeh. It is my effort. It is my exertion. It is my talent. It is my virtue. It is my connections. It's my hard work. That's what built all this wealth. I did it. I. And as you become bloated through your own sense of self-esteem and self-importance, you lose the plot. You become very self-centered, very narcissistic. You can't sustain a relationship. You can't really be religious because there's no room for God in your life either. But Jacob is saying, all I did was create the vessel, but the blessing comes from you, O Lord. Look at how many people have the most amazing ideas. And they work hard, they work strenuously, but their ideas don't catch on. As we say in Yiddish, es geht ihm nicht. No matter how hard he tries, it just doesn't work. It doesn't befall him. So he is humbled by his experiences. He then goes on in the prayer, and he says, I am afraid, O Lord. I'm afraid of Esau, lest he come and smite me along with my wives and children. Pen yavo ve'ikani emal banim. He'll kill both parent and child. Ruthless. My brother Esau is ruthless. Now, what I've always pondered on this is Jacob's fear. There are numerous, countless exhortations in the Bible not to be afraid. Al tira. I wrote a whole book about it called Face Your Fear. Fear is not a godly emotion. There's a difference between fear and caution. Caution is a calculated response to a real danger, while fear is a hysterical response to an imagined threat. But the more you trust in God, the less fear you have. So why is Jacob afraid suddenly? His fear would seem out of context. His fear would seem out of place. He should not be afraid. And the beautiful explanation that I've come up with, I'm kidding here. What I believe is the explanation is that the source of fearlessness, the source of all courage, is righteousness. If you believe you've done the right thing, then you're fearless. Because you've subordinated yourself to something higher than you, and what happens to you ultimately doesn't matter. You're leading a righteous life. The great cause to which you've devoted your life, that's what matters. You don't matter, that's why you're not afraid. So if you've done nothing wrong, there's nothing to be afraid of. If you've done nothing wrong, then you have the strength of your convictions. Jacob's fear is that he fears he might have done something wrong. Yes, he believed that Esau did not deserve the firstborn blessing. Yes, he believed that Esau was a wicked man and he should have been denied the blessing. And yet he's not certain, he's not 1,000% positive. He still fears that maybe he did something wrong. That's why he's afraid. He's not sure that he's righteous. He fears that he maybe he did engage in deception and trickery. Maybe he's culpable of not having visited his father all of these years. That's why he's afraid.
Is it talking to God or praying to God?
It's praying to God. So, the source of his fear, I believe, is his questioning his own moral standing. Okay, from there we go on, and Jacob now is going to, about to confront Esau. He moves everyone across the river, his whole camp, all his wives, his children, and Vayivasaru levado, and he's now alone. Vayabek ish imo, and now a man wrestles with him until the morning. Very mysterious. An angel, a person, a man. But Jacob is ultimately victorious. And amazingly, he doesn't do what other victorious men do in antiquity, which is vanquish his enemy, kill his enemy. He asks for a blessing. And his adversary says to him, whoever this is, whether it's Esau's archangel, whether it's one of God's angels, we don't know. The man says to him, your name will no longer be Jacob, from now on it will be Israel. Kisarisa im Elokim v'manashim atucha, because you have wrestled with God and with man, and you have prevailed, you've been victorious. This is one of the most amazing verses of the entire Bible. Because for me, this new name that the Jewish people will get, not the people of the heel, Yaakov, and we've been called Bnei Yaakov, the children of Jacob would be the people of the heel. We're now Bnei Yisrael, the children of he who wrestles with God. We wrestle with God. There's a difference between the two. And it comes down to two visions of religion. One vision of religion is that all people who are religious are people of the heel. Religion makes you subservient. Religion is about taking orders. Religion is about bowing your head in silent submission. God is always right, people are always wrong. So if bad things happen to good people, God is always just, and human beings are sinful. Human beings are corrupt. They get their just reward. Why do bad things happen to us? Because really, we're corrupt. But his name has changed away from this vision of religion as one who submits, which is par for the course. The word Islam literally means he who submits. And to be a Muslim is to be engaged in an eternal act of submission. And even Christianity emphasizes belief even over actions. Faith comes first. You have to have faith in Christ or you're going to go to hell. Salvation comes from that act of faith, that act of submission, obedience. Judaism is the opposite. We are the people who wrestle even with God. When we witness bad things happening, we hold God accountable. Like Abraham, who says to God, Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat, will the God of the entire earth not practice justice? when Moses sees that the Jews are being destroyed for the sin of the golden calf, he says, "Mecheni nam sivrcha asher kasafta." Remove my name from the Torah you have written. When God sends Moses to rescue the Jews from Egypt, and Pharaoh's reaction after being confronted is, "I'm not going to let them go. In fact, I'm not even giving them straw to make their bricks anymore." The situation, it gets worse. Moses returns to God and he says, you haven't helped the people at all. My gosh, for a prophet to speak to God this way. What we learn from Jacob in obtaining this name is one of my favorite concepts in the whole world. It's what I call the defiant man of faith, the rebellious man of faith. For most people, those expressions would be a contradiction in terms. The man of faith is never rebellious. The man of faith is never defiant. It's the submissive man of faith that we're accustomed to. But Jacob says, religion is supposed to make you defiant. It's supposed to make you fearless. And you even demand from God that He keep His promises about all the good things that are supposed to befall the Jewish people. He says to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, your children will be like the stars of the heaven. Really? There's only 14 million Jews in the world. You'll be a nation of princes. A nation that is looked up to by the nations of the world as an Am Chacham V'Navan, as a wise and insightful nation. And yet we've been trodden upon. We have been persecuted. We've been oppressed. God, where are all your promises? That's not an act of sacrilege. That's an act of affirmation of faith. Because faith invites the rebellious man of faith, the defiant man of faith. That's what this change of name means, what it signifies. And it's quite remarkable.
I think they discovered the Newton law. That the more you push God, the more you get God back.
Very good.
You submit,
You're right.
you're asleep.
Well, it's not like in any relationship. I understand the relationship between God and man is not one of equals, of course. But we're not just cosmic chaff. We have a part of God in us, and we are God's children, and we are each of infinite value. We matter. The religious message that we don't matter is a toxic message that should be dismissed. A final insight into this week's Torah reading that I find very interesting. When Jacob gives Esau this big present in order to appease him, a lot of sheep, goats, cattle, Esau refuses to accept it, and he says, "My brother, I have robe. I've got so much. I got tons. I don't need it anymore. Achi yilcha sherlach. My brother, keep that which is yours." Jacob responds 2 verses later, and he says, "No, my brother, I ask you please to take my gift. Ki yesh li kol, because I have enough." Very interesting expressions. Esau has a lot, and Jacob has enough. Rove versus kol. Rove, a great deal, so much, versus kol, enough. It's the difference between happiness and misery. What is the difference between happiness and misery? Insatiability leads to misery. So much! I need so much! I need more! I need too much! Versus contentment, which leads to a sense of satisfaction and happiness. Jacob represents the insatiable man who just wants power and influence, and enough is never enough. He devours and he swallows everything around him. He subsumes under his own identity. He becomes part of his own personal rubric. This is mine. He has to take other men's wives, as the Talmud tells many stories. His wife is never enough. His money is never enough. His job is never enough. Nothing is ever enough. He's a black hole. He's a sinkhole. Whatever you put into him, it just goes out the other end. And he represents, unfortunately, what's happening in our country. America was a prosperous, wealthy nation where people actually were happy with their blessings. But then the homes we had weren't large enough. The cars we had were not new enough. And as we progress through this not enough, we collapse the greatest economy the world has ever seen. By borrowing money we didn't have, by creating a toxic subprime mortgage market where people could never repay their loans, and that brought down the banks. And the banks were just loaning to anyone because they were just selling this junk to another sucker down the line. That's the Esau approach. Yeshli rove. Tons, give me plenty. But Jacob says, I want the blessing of enough. It's the title of one of my books. America has every blessing. The blessing of a very high standard of living, the blessing of great medical care, thank God. May everyone be able to afford it. The blessing of a high standard of living. I said that. The blessing of a strong military that spreads freedom, the blessing of a strong sense of patriotism, the blessing of a glorious history. There's only one blessing missing from America, and that is the blessing of enough. It's still not enough. We're still unhappy. Very high rates of depression. And that's what comes from insatiability. And that's the difference between their two worldviews of Esau and Jacob. Rove versus Kol.
That's interesting. The angel coming in the middle.
Let me just finish this thought. I'm sorry.